Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a 10-game slate for you for Major League Baseball. We do have some core plays on the slate here with Zunino at catcher and Pascuanto at first base. On FanDuel, I have Pascuanto at first base and also Kyle Schwarber in outfield. So this slate does have some weather issues. The San Francisco-Detroit game and the Baltimore-Chicago White Sox game are both risky plays today. Hopefully, we'll find out before these games. The slate starts on the San Francisco-Detroit game. However, we may not get the information on the Baltimore game until after the slate locks. So do keep that in mind. But it should hopefully. I do hope we get the information prior. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Also, drop a comment below with your home run calls, and if you get one right, I'll mention you in the video afterwards tomorrow. So with that said, let's get into this slate here. So for pitching, there's some expensive plays today, with Garrett Cole being the most expensive one. He started the season about as well as we could have hoped for. His last game versus Cleveland wasn't as good as the others, but he has started. He's only given up 3 earned runs in the first 3 games. This matchup is not ideal, but he has a good strikeout rate right now, and he's the best strikeout pitcher on the slate. Then we're going to look at Shane Bieber for Cleveland against Washington. He has some really nice upside today. This is a good matchup for him, and he has good upside here. And you could pair him with Cole if you wanted to, though it's going to be hard when it comes to the prices of bats. But that would be my 2 favorite pitchers. So either one of those guys is your top pitcher on the slate. Sandy Alcantara is also somewhat interesting today, but he's a higher risk here. He started this season somewhat inconsistently. He's had a good game, but also 2 bad games, and he does have some upside here with the strikeout potential, though. Arizona hasn't been particularly great against strikeout pitchers so far, so I do think he has some ability here. A couple cheaper options here, and Zach Gallen for Arizona. He has some nice upside in this matchup against Miami. Though Miami is a little bit better than they had been in the past, but he has good stuff here. He's a little bit high risk, high reward because he does have some strikeout potential, but he's had some bad games to start the year as well, especially giving up some home runs in San Diego. Then we're going to look at Dylan Case. Now, he's probably the riskiest option that I would want to utilize here. He does have a tough matchup here against Baltimore, and I actually like Baltimore a lot today, but he is viable because of his price being somewhat cheaper, and he's got some upside. He's played really well to start the season. He's only given up 3 earned runs as well, and he does have decent strikeout stuff, and he's a little bit cheaper than Cole and Bieber, so he's a good alternative or even a second pitcher option. But he is risky, and also that game does have potential to be rained out as well, so do keep that in mind. But let's go ahead and get into our catchers here. And so our top 2 catchers are going to be Rutschman for Baltimore. Again, if the game plays, and he's definitely got some great upside in this matchup. Though his price is very expensive, and he's somewhat hard to roster. Zunino for Cleveland is my favorite play at his core position here. He's got home run potential in this one. He's got great metrics, and he looks like a really solid option here against Corbin, who's just a very bad pitcher this season. So I really like Zunino here. And at first base, we're going to look at Pascuanto for Kansas City. Now, this is not the most ideal matchup against Kyle Wright, but Kyle Wright really hasn't done particularly great against guys like him, and so I do think Wright will have some guys on Kansas City get some hits, and he's definitely going to be one of them. He's very shaky against left-handed hitters, and Pascuanto should be able to take advantage. Some other value options here is Darren Ruff for San Francisco. He's somewhat risky here. He's kind of he doesn't play a whole lot of games, but when he does play, he tends to get some fantasy points when he starts. So I do think he's got some viability here, but he's a little bit risky. Then we'll look at Justin Turner for Boston. Now, he's a great alternative to Pascuanto if you want to avoid Pascuanto. Turner has hit the ball decently well to start the season. He hasn't hit a home run yet, but he does have that potential, and so I do think he has some nice upside in this matchup here. As for second base, we're going to start with Brandon Lowe. Now, Brandon Lowe did take off yesterday. He did end up coming in the game and still scored 3 fantasy points because he got a hit. But he's got some nice upside here, though his price is high. He is viable on the slate, and he's worth taking a look at, especially at this position where there's not a whole lot of great options. But David Villar for San Francisco. If he draws a start here, he's kind of a boomer bust home run potential type of situation. His price is not ideal here, but he is an okay alternative, especially at a position that really just doesn't have a whole lot to like at second base. It's very kind of limited when it comes to good options. Andre Jimenez is also okay, but he's somewhat overpriced on the slate here on FanDuel. Then we'll look at third base here, and Austin Riley pops off the page here for third base, so he's pretty expensive here. He has hit the ball really well to start the year, but he is risky simply due to his price, and he's somewhat hard to roster. David Villar is also available here, as is Gunnar Henderson, who hasn't started the season particularly great, but he does have home run potential, and he does have tendency to have some big games, so it's just a matter of time before he gets himself going again, and he's got some good utility in this situation. Then we're going to look at a cheap option here at this position because it is somewhat limited, and that's Gabriel Arias. Now, he hasn't played a ton of games so far as a starter, but when he has played as a starter, he's had a couple good games. He even hit a home run, but I don't really expect that too much. He's just a really solid high-end Hail Mary type option. He's probably one of the best, sub 2,500 players on this slate, and so I do think he's worth taking a look at. He also has stolen base potential, and he does manage to get on base okay. So, at least in his past. So I do think he's got some utility here. He's high risk, high reward. He's a Hail Mary play, but in order to help you pay for some other players, he's definitely a guy to take a look at. Then at shortstop, we're going to look at Ahmad Rosario. Now, he's a little bit overpriced for Cleveland, but he's got a great matchup here. He hasn't hit the ball particularly great to start the season so far, but Cleveland does have stolen base potential here, and he's playing well enough that he's definitely worth a look. Gunnar Henderson can also play shortstop, and then I'll also look at Kiki Hernandez for Boston. He looks like he's in a really solid spot. His price is pretty fair. He hasn't hit the ball well to start the season, but he does have home run potential, and he does have stolen base potential as well, so I do think he's worth taking a look at. And then a super Hail Mary option here is Zach Neto for the Angels. Now, he only has played one game to start the year, and he's the first player from the 2022 class to actually come up to the majors, but the Angels are banking on him doing okay here. Now, he had 2 strikeouts yesterday, but I look for him to have another good potential outing here, especially against the easier pitcher. So I don't think that he's a great play, but he's a good way to pay down if you want to avoid Arias and you want to at a position that's somewhat hard to find good options. And the outfield, we're going to look at Aaron Judge here. Now, Aaron Judge has high risk, high reward, but he is hitting the ball pretty well, and he had a home run the other day. He's got home run potential again. He's also been getting walked some, so that's nice. And so he has some utility here, but his price does make him hard to roster. Same kind of goes for Mike Trout, but he's a lot cheaper than Judge. And he has really good metrics on this slate, and so he's somebody I really like. He is hard to roster again with his price, but he's definitely got a nice upside. And then Kyle Schwarber, I think he's probably somebody that I feel like is going to get a home run today. He is high risk, high reward. His batting average has not been great, and he is hard to roster on DraftKings, but he's really great on FanDuel. Then we'll look at some value plays at this position here. Ref Snyder for Boston has some utility here as a good hitter. Even though he hasn't hit the ball particularly well, he does have some potential to get walked, and he's also had a home run as well. He's also had a few hits in the last couple of games. He's just a little bit up and down, but he does have that power where you can sometimes get home runs out of him. And so I do think this is a situation where he's high risk, high reward, but he's got a good matchup. Then we'll look at Eloy Jimenez for Chicago White Sox. Now, I really do like him on the slate, but he hasn't hit the ball well to start the season. He also hasn't hit a home run, so if he can have a really good game here, then that would definitely be an advantage. He does have that home run potential. His price is not super ideal, but he's definitely viable on the slate in a plus matchup. Then we'll look at Corbin Carroll for Arizona. He has some really nice upside here. He's hit the ball really solidly to start the season. He's had a lot of pretty good fantasy games, and so he has some nice utility and a good matchup, even though it's a little bit of a tough matchup. Then we'll look at Kerry Carpenter for Detroit. he's got some high risk, high reward here, but he has home run potential in this game. He's hit the ball pretty well the last couple games with 2 home runs, and even though his batting average isn't great, he does have that potential to hit home runs, and this is a matchup that I really like. Andrew Benintendi, oops, Benintendi for Chicago White Sox is also in a really good spot. He hasn't hit a home run yet this season either, but he has hit the ball decently well. He also gets on base quite a few games so far this year, and so he definitely has some good utility, and he's not too expensive, so that also benefits you here. Lars Nootbaar has not started a lot of games, and he's a kind of a guy that I like if Benintendi doesn't play. He would be the guy that I would replace him with. He's only played in 2 games, but if he does draw the start today, he's definitely worth taking a look at because he's got good metrics. And then finally, Brendan Marsh for Philadelphia. He's got some nice utility here. He's got home run potential. He's hit the ball pretty well to start the season, and he's got good metrics. Again, his price is not super ideal, but he's a good alternative to Eloy Jimenez or even to Benintendi and Nootbaar. So with that said, guys, that's what I have for DraftKings. Let's move over here to FanDuel now. And we're going to start in the pitchers here. And basically, you have 3 good options in Cole, Bieber, and Gallen. And I think Cole is the best option, but Bieber has some upside with it being a weaker matchup. And then Gallen, he's kind of a value play on the slate. He's not super cheap, but he's cheap enough that he's worth taking a look at. He's high risk, high reward, but he's got as much side as anybody. He's facing a pretty decent matchup, so I do like him here. And to the catchers and first basemen, so I actually have quite a few good options here, and I do think that probably utilizing utility spot for one of these other guys is probably not a terrible option, assuming that these games play. Adley Rutschman obviously has nice upside, and his price is actually pretty reasonable over here, and he's hit the ball extremely well to start the season, so he's definitely worth taking a look at. Vinny Pasquanto, obviously a great option on the slate. He's got good metrics, and he's hit the ball decently well, and he's got a great matchup here today against a pitcher who does terrible against lefties. Darren Ruff is a kind of a cheap value play here at $2,300. He's definitely somebody that's worth taking a look at. If this game plays, he's got some nice upside. Justin Turner is a little bit cheaper over here on FanDuel, which definitely gives him some nice utility. He hasn't hit a home run yet, but he is hitting the ball okay the last few games, and I think he has some potential for a long ball in this one. And then for kind of a Hail Mary at this position, since you don't need a catcher on FanDuel, Zunino, if anybody at catcher is going to hit a home run, he'd be the guy I like the most. He's got really nice upside in this situation, and he has big time potential. Then we're going to look at second base and Brandon Lowe. He has some really good potential here. He's hit the ball extremely well this season. Now, he didn't play yesterday. Well, he came off the bench yesterday and had a couple at bats, but anytime that he hadn't done that, he's had some really big games. I like him in this matchup, and he's got great upside. He was almost a core play except for his price. Andre Jimenez for Cleveland, he seems like a little bit underpriced here for this potential. He's hit the ball extremely well to start the season. He's got nice upside. He's also getting stolen bases, which is very nice here on FanDuel, and Cleveland looks like a team to stack. Gabriel Arias, he can actually play a couple different positions as well as some of the other guys I've already mentioned, and he's also minimum price at $2,000. He's only started a couple games this year, and in those 3 games, he has got fantasy points, and so I look for him to be a high risk, high reward kind of Hail Mary option, but his price makes him viable on the slate, especially part of a Cleveland stack. Austin Riley looks very interesting today for Atlanta. He has some nice upside here. He's priced pretty reasonably, and he's got good home run potential in this matchup. Justin Turner can also play at third base as well. And at shortstop, you can use Andre Jimenez, Ahmad Rosario, or Gabriel Arias, who I've already mentioned throughout the other positions. And really, I would use one of those 3 in Cleveland at that shortstop position. You can use any of them. There's really just not a whole lot to like there otherwise. Thairo Estrada is okay, but again, that game might also be rained out, so we'll have to wait and see. So then we'll go into the outfielders, and we'll start with Aaron Judge. He's obviously pretty expensive over here, but he's not as bad as he is on DraftKings, and he's got home run potential, so he's definitely worth taking a look at. Mike Trout is also in the same price range and has some nice upside in this matchup. He is somewhat risky, though, because he hasn't hit the ball quite as well as we'd like him to, but he does have some utility here. Kyle Schwarber looks like a must-play here on FanDuel. He's underpriced and has good metrics for this matchup. Despite not hitting the ball particularly well to start the year, he's got nice upside. Then we're going to look at Rep Snyder. He's just a little bit underpriced here. He's been kind of boom or bust throughout the season so far, but he's got nice potential in this game, and he's definitely somebody to take a look at. Cedric Mullins looks a little bit underpriced here on FanDuel. He's definitely somebody that you can roster today with this price range, and he has some really good metrics. Then we'll look at Stanton for the Yankees. He's a little bit underpriced over here on FanDuel, which is nice. Gives him some utility here. He's kind of a home runner best option on the slate. Eloy Jimenez has not started the season particularly well, but his price is pretty fair, and he has some good utility on the slate as a good option as per home run potential. And then Ahmad Rosario, he can also play here at outfield, as well as Lars Nootbaar, who's a really good option today for St. Louis. He's only played 2 games to start the season, but he does have some stolen base potential if he can get on base, and he does hit the ball decently well when he has opportunities. So I do think he's a really good option if he draws a start. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.